Hello, Steve White, Steve Hearts 89. Well, I had just completed a Alfred Hitchcock marathon and watched most of his films. I was missing 5, which I didn't realise, and I didn't watch the silent films. And then David Lynch died, and I'm like, well, I have to watch David Lynch's films. I mean, how can I not? But I needed a couple of days, and also it's harder to get into the headspace of David Lynch and go into that netherworld. So it took me until Monday. But yeah, I did a double last night. I did Eraserhead and The Elephant Man, the 2 black and white films he kind of made in the 70s. So it's going to be a review of just Eraserhead. Now, where do you start with Eraserhead? It's brilliant. It's amazing. It's fascinating and all those things. I first saw it in film school because when you're a film student, you just have to look at people like David Lynch because they're just the examples that are held up. But I'd seen The Elephant Man on TV when I was a kid, and of course I'd been in love with Twin Peaks since, the day it was on TV. So it's not like I didn't know who Lynch was, but I had never seen anything like this. So it's a black and white film. It's not that long. It's about an hour and 24 minutes. It was made, I think, it was made over about 4 years, I think, in the 70s. It was kind of made like a student film where Lynch sort of got the money together so he could produce it and do it himself, and then he ran out of money, and basically everyone on the crew basically chipped in and gave him money so they could finish the shoot, and it took years. I heard 4 years, but I can't believe it took a whole 4 years. I think it was maybe 3 years covering 4 actual years. But eventually they finished it, and it was released, and it actually was profitable. Like, actually made 7 something million and only cost 100,000. So that was quite a big start for a filmmaker, because he originally was an artist and then he got into film somehow. And someone described it as descending into a neverworld, and he said, yes, that is what it is. It's neverworld. It's not today, it's not yesterday, it's not tomorrow, it's no time, no area. It's just this world these people exist in, and you can't tell what is reality, what is nightmare, what is fantasy, what is a dream. It's a dream state for the most part. And what is it about? At least this one is about something. It's about, and although he didn't know when he was making it what it was about, so he was just doing his Lynch thing, but there definitely was something behind it that he sort of validated since. It's obviously about fatherhood and being a parent. And it's very disturbing. It is a horror movie. And oh God, it starts off with a man, Henry, played by oh my God, I forgot his name. He played Pete on Twin Peaks. Is it John Nance? And honestly, I didn't recognise him in the part, and when I heard that after the fact, now when I look at it, sometimes I'll see Pete and I'm like, oh no, because before that it was like he was a Razorhead, and now it's like, well, that was Pete when he was young. It's like, oh, I wish that hadn't happened. But yeah, he's coming home he's on vacation, but he seems to be coming home from work. He lives in an industrialized area, and this was sort of supposed to be based on Philadelphia because that's where David Lynch lived. It was filmed in some sort of refinery or something. He called it the Tank. And he hasn't seen his girlfriend for a while. His place is a surreal environment. There's plants without just mounds of dirt with trees growing out of them. There's plants without pots, and seems to be growth. Seems to be some element of organicness to the environment. It's just, it's not real. It's not naturalistic. It's not realistic. And eventually he goes and meets with his girlfriend, and he finds out that she has given birth to a premature mutated baby, and he's forced to essentially marry her and take care of the baby. So it's obviously trying to give voice or give an image to the anxiety that a man would have about having a child. I'm a gay man. I've never had that issue or that concern. It's never been something that's weighed heavy on my psyche. So I didn't really get this the first time I saw it, but watching it again, I'm like, oh, yes, okay, there's a conception, there's the pregnancy, there's the birth, here's the baby, here's the imprisonment of having to be in this environment and take care of this. And all the characters, of course, are surreal. The girlfriend seems to have some sort of seizure when they're meeting the mother, and the mother brushes her hair until she comes back to normal. The mother kind of threatens him into revealing that they had sexual intercourse, and that the baby's his, now has to take care of it, while at the same time she's assaulting him sexually almost. Not literally, but almost, and she's like licking his neck and like it's disturbing, it's surreal, it's not realistic, it's not meant to be. Are these incredibly dysfunctional people in a hideous environment, or is this a dream, or is it a nightmare, or is the whole life that he's living a nightmare? And it's all fine because it's all open to interpretation, and it's interesting, and it's just interesting to look at. I remember it fairly negatively, and I thought, God, I don't want to watch Eraserhead again. I just remember it being loud noise and nothing happening when I saw it as a film student. I'm sure I had more respect for it than that, but that's all I really remembered. And the soundtrack is just this constant industrial noise and a combination of noises, and it gets at high levels at points when things are tense and disturbing, and other times it sort of disappears in the background. The baby, of course, makes a lot of noise, and it is one of the most disturbing special effects in the history of cinema, I think, and no one really knows how it was made. And there's really only one scene where an element of it kind of fails, but could still kind of be explained. A moment I'm not going to go into that because it's otherwise so amazing that you have trouble working out how they did this in 1979 on no budget. But I hear David Lynch did the baby himself. I didn't check into that, but that's what I've heard. So yeah, the wife moves in with him. She can't handle him or the baby. She leaves for a while. He has to do it on his own. He has fantasies about a woman in a radiator, because apparently this radiator had a little room inside it, a little space inside it. And during the production, David Lynch imagined that created this woman in the radiator. It was some sort of fantasy for him, some sort of escape, some sort of ray of light, which I guess is some sort of Marilyn Monroe-esque ideal of the real woman out there, the fantasy woman out there on some level. He fantasizes about that. He has an affair with the woman across the hall, who's very beautiful. Right away, you sort of see her as predatory on some level. And the scene where they have sex is amazing. They sink into like a pool in the center of the bed, which almost feels like a spotlight. It's a surrealist film. It's amazing on that level. And the fact he had no real budget to do this, and the inventiveness that went into all these sets and all these elements. And then eventually he examines this baby, and because he has a dream where he goes into the radiator and his head falls off and the baby's head emerges and his head is lying in a pool of blood, and it's just all very sort of open to interpretation. And I don't like the people who are Lynchian elitists and they believe that they know, they have gotten down to the bottom of these meanings of these films. They understand, and anyone who disagrees is just ignorant and unintelligent and unsophisticated and wrong, when so many of these films have no actual meaning and they are open to interpretation and created to just be a generator of ideas that people, it's like someone described, yeah. So after all that, he examines the baby, because it's swaddled basically in bandages, the body, and you just see this long head, which is like a sperm basically. And the sperms in the film are like disturbing. It's almost like the alien from Aliens, and it's just, so he cuts open this thing and it has no skin over its internal organs. The internal organs are just held together in this bandage sort of thing, and he basically stabs it in the organs and pulls it out of his misery, basically. And when you think in terms of a parent having a child, taking care of a child, having to deal with it, crying, sleep deprivation, stress, anxiety, all these things, and he kills his own child, basically. And no, it's not a realistic film. It's not the real world. It's nightmare, it's dreams, it's fantasy. But ultimately, it's a man being caught in a situation of having to take care of a baby he didn't plan to have, which I don't know if it's. I mean, it's in this. It's a monster in this. Now, was it? I'm trying to keep this to 10 minutes, but yeah. So and then in the end, he sees the woman in the radiator again, and he runs to her and he's embraced by her in the light. So it's like he escapes the horrors of parenthood, kills the baby, and then goes off and pursues the sort of ideal fantasy girl. So it's got a lot more story than you would think. It's a lot more cohesive than you would think. But it's all about the visuals and the sound and the feeling that it gives you when you watch it. And it's an experience, but it does actually have a whole story and meaning behind it, unlike some of his other films, which I have issues with that. Even though all this was unconscious for him at the time, it was all there. And you can dissect it and look at it and see it. And I do love that about the film. So I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. And what was most interesting about this was I found an interview that was done in 1979, and it was done by a member of the UCLA Film School, or one of the film schools, and it was for their production class, TV production class. So one of his friends said, "Can I interview you about this film you've just done, and we'll set up like it'll be like an interview like on TV," and it was done for that, and somehow someone found it and released it. So it's like almost someone did a segment on Eraserhead in '79 on like 60 Minutes or something. So it plays like that. But I think Lynch was very open with this because it was just, I think, one of his film school friends, and it wasn't meant to ever be seen, I think. So he doesn't seem as guarded and as cagey as he has been with being interviewed about the film after the fact. So I found it really revealing and interesting. They went back to the actual location and they filmed him talking on the location. They even had the dead cat was still there, and if you know about the dead cat, it was still there. So there's a couple of years later, and it's fairly disturbing, but he does sort of go into some interesting things about how beautiful things are when you look at them separately in their elements and create their own sort of aesthetic about them. But if you look at the thing as a whole, like the place where they filmed in was a dump, but when you look at the reflections of this on that and the texture of this with contrasted with that, it is a beautiful, interesting place. That's what he sees when he sees a place like that. So it was just really interesting, and I'm glad I found that interview and watched it afterwards, and it really helped to clarify what I've just watched and what I felt. And you don't normally get that with Lynch because he's learned to be vague because it keeps people coming back for more and obsessing about it rather than giving people some sort of resolution and some... because there's still so much to interpret and look through, and it's not realistic, but you get basically what it's about. So I feel like Eraserhead was one of his few real successes. And ironically, he didn't think about the audience. He said when he made this film, he was just expressing something he felt. He wasn't actually thinking about the audience and their experience. His other films, which apparently he was trying to speak to an audience or something, he in my opinion, totally fails and does something totally superficial and fake and empty that is designed just to, it's like a trap that catches people in and they try and work it out and there is no resolution. And they just get caught in this. But we'll get into that when I review the other films. And I can't believe I'm still talking about this, but if you know what Eraserhead is and you're watching this review because you're interested, you're going to watch till the end. So I'm kind of, okay, it's going to be a 15-minute video, but so I think, what else was there? What else did I mean, it's basically a horror film about fatherhood. I mean, the girl in the radiator who's dancing around and dodging the sperms as they fall from the sky and then squishing them. It's like she's... the way they make her this sort of ideal fantasy woman who doesn't get pregnant and just is beautiful and there to entertain you. And there are just... other people would have different interpretations of that. So there is enough here to interpret and have fun with, but enough that you actually know what this was about. So that's why I actually am finding, I think I'm probably going to like Eraserhead more than some of the other films. But yeah, I need to stop talking, and I think I've covered all my notes without really having to look at them. Like, I guess Philadelphia, he lived in Philadelphia and he was talking about how he lived in fear. He found it was a decaying place. and that was one of the things that inspired him. So he did talk also in the interview about things that inspired him. And someone did try and ask him about being a father and parenthood and how much that was reflected in this, and he didn't really want to go into it because it's a bit too disturbing to think about. I'm sure there are many parents who've thought of doing what he did, who in desperate, sleep-deprived, depressed, anxious moments just wish they could do what he did. And that's one of the most disturbing things. I think that is all in there, whether he was conscious of it or not. Yeah, I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. I cannot think of anything else to say about this without going into whole other tangents. It'll be the whole other videos. Let me know what you think of Eraserhead and Lynch in general, I guess.